Oh. Oh no. I wasn't expecting this. Okay. Well, I have a revival, so that's a good sign. But I don't have a weapon, which is a really bad sign. But we'll have to see. Oh jeez, dude, this is gonna be... Oh no. At least Elizabeth is still... You know... Oh, but I only have escape. Oh, and I don't have, like, restrict. Oh, which was the big thing from last time. Dude, yeah. Really? You know, I wonder also... So, I mean, there's definitely... the AI will definitely... Well, at least the AI enemies will definitely use, like, strike and counter. Even when it doesn't, even... they don't read you, and they use it just, they use it when they're getting desperate. I don't know if the players do, but I also don't know if that might be just because, because everybody's acrobats. So if you see Elizabeth use strike, and I miss it for some reason, just keep that in mind. Jeez. But yeah. Okay, so, I don't know, I must have talked about it before. I think my ideal sword, at some point, I must have talked about it. Which I don't know if I have a really good answer for. I mean, there's a lot of reasons you would want to have certain shapes for swords, I think the katana, for one thing, is certainly a very interesting over-exaggeration of ideas. I mean, I'm definitely not super diehard fan of the katana. It's not a bad sword, It's just, I mean, it might have a few. I mean, honestly, it might have a few disadvantages when compared to, a medieval, contemporary medieval sword. But also, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, I think, to my understanding, at least, it comes down to, well, the material wasn't as good, basically. Like, they couldn't smelt out all of the impurities, so, the folded swords, spread out the impurities more, so it wasn't, it wasn't as, fragile, but, but it still had, some level of impurities. And, a sword that just didn't have it, but was, still constructed using the same techniques and everything, it would just be objectively better. But in the grand scheme of things, like, if we're talking about, combat scenarios, or, war, like, how important is the durability of your weapon? Like, I don't know. And maybe it was more important back then, but like, it just needs to get you through a fight, and if it's breaking, at the end of the fight, then you get it replaced. And that might not necessarily be a reality of, medieval and Renaissance era combat. I could be that could be mistaken, but I would also assume that that's probably something that could and should and would happen. It would be a very bad idea to, send your soldiers in with nearly broken weapons. So, what else? But that's just the katana. I think now there are a few things about the katana. Okay, so to my understanding, the katana is more, and there's a few ways that the cross section works, where it's not necessarily like monastic, I suppose, where it's not necessarily just one, completely uniform material. Sometimes you're gonna have like a jacket, like you're gonna have a hard core and then a softer jacket that will absorb some of the impact and be able to not break, or be able to take a little bit more. I think, anyway, that's what I've heard on one Wikipedia article. Of course, that, depending on the time period we're talking about, that greatly depends. But to my understanding, so like spring steel swords have their advantages, certainly, but also the sort of folded metal style of katanas also have their advantages, where like a spring sword is going to be more wobbly, and thus like edge alignment is going to be a much more like better edge alignment is going to mean more for that, whereas the katana is going to be less because it's just a more rigid sword, and it's going to be a little bit more forgiving. Now there could come down to a lot of factors, like the exact shape of the cross section, and stuff. So, I'm definitely no sword expert, but I do know enough to be dangerous. So I think probably my ideal sword would be that. Now I don't know what kind of blade it would be. And maybe, I don't know, it depends. Probably a fair, I don't know. I'm halfway between wanting to be like a rapier and like a broadsword. Maybe something a little bit in between. Probably something straight though. I really want to say a Yatagan as well. If I had to just pick up one sword, just like the most stereotypical example of a sword, and just say, there you go, a Yatagan would probably be it. Which has a curve and then a reverse curve, so that it has the advantages of a curve, but also comes back to a point and is fairly, in line. So, you can do thrusts as well. At least that's the theory. But honestly, the most the best part of the Yatagan to me, and this is not, the greatest. The most interesting part to me is the handle. There's no guard, and there's no guard, and there is a very big, like, 2 ears at the bottom. Shaska's Russian swords kind of have the same thing, except it's usually like a solid sort of rounded pommel thing, sort of asymmetric thing. I think they're usually solid and they're not like wings, so they don't have a channel. But I would take that grip on probably a like a broadsword blade. It would be fast. The grips would be fastened like a messer with like two bolts through the tang instead of any other way, because that just makes sense to me. It would probably be, well, it'd probably be screws. Some kind of screws anyway. Let's see what else. And then a folded steel blade. Yeah, I think I would go with definitely folded steel if I had to take a preference. Now, if this was going to be a combat sword that I was actually going to take into some kind of sword combat, I don't think I would change my mind. Certainly, because I'm not necessary. Because, like, you know, if there's something that makes it easier, if there's some way that it's easier for me to, you know, if the edge alignment can be more forgiving, I'll take it. And if it's a matter of durability issues, then I would probably just attempt to also not get into fights. Mostly, is probably how I would actually operate. So that would be an important thing to consider there, I think. Yeah, and I think in terms of the no guard, I don't know. I really like the no guard style, but I think I would also probably fully recognize that that's not the greatest idea. I think if I had to do anything, I'm trying to think. Would I... Okay, maybe go with a very small guard, but I think it's not that a small guard or a large guard looks better. It's just that, I don't know, the guard, I don't know, it's just... I understand why it's there, obviously. And I understand that it is important, but also, like, there are some countries that just said fuck it. So, you know, so... Or some cultures that said fuck it. So maybe some sort of Chinese guard. I don't know. Would be a huge Frankenstein of a thing, because, like, you know, it's also really funny because, like, well, I don't know. I think I've almost completely avoided most of... Well, I don't know. I guess not. I guess it would be a messer, and it would be a messer combined with a sort of more European style blade geometry, I guess. So, yeah. I was gonna say I was basically avoiding, like, Central Europe designs, but no, it's really everything. Well, I mean, everything except for, like, Africa, which I don't know too much about, like, African styles. Oh, and I mean Southeastern Asia as well. Actually, I don't know what you would... I mean, China and Japan. China, Japan. I'm gonna say Russia, kind of, but then also, like, Yatagans, which are Middle Eastern. I don't know. And I guess it would be more... Well, I guess it would be more the Yatagan grip than the Shaska grip, although I really do like Shaskas. But yeah, there would be that. And now I don't know, okay? Since we have time, since we have a lot of time. Okay, so ideally, I think if I had to have an ideal combat loadout, right? For one thing, I wouldn't want to be a primary combatant. I don't know what situation I would, like... Okay, in modern combat, Okay, if I don't want to be a primary combatant and I just take a pistol, okay. I have a knife, okay. I wouldn't see much of a reason to have a sword in modern combat. It would have to be a very uniquely designed sword. Right, and like, you know, if you wanted to have a modern melee weapon, it would be, I mean, you would have to take some inspiration from, you know, like, when you have armor. You know, what's a good melee weapon? A sword is not necessarily the best. But if we can extend disbelief for a hot minute and say that somehow the sword is a legitimate weapon, I just really like the idea of sword and gun. I don't know, there's something really cool about that. I don't think of it necessarily as like a pirate thing, which it is, but I also kind of think of it as sort of this sort of like officer loadout, although granted you usually would use the sword more for, you know, you would use the sword more for, you know, leading troops, although, I mean, certainly depending on the era, like, you know, percussion cap, like Civil War, yeah, I could, yeah, 100%, like, fighting with a sword. I mean, if you're the officer, you're probably not going to be doing the bulk of the fighting, but, you know, basically until cartridges come around, you're not, a sword is of dubious value. Maybe a little bit into the cartridge era, a sword would be okay, depending on, you know, what kind of gun you're like if you're fighting a cult single action army and you're fighting Doc Holliday, I think you could fight Doc Holliday with a sword. Or somebody with terrible accuracy. Although I wouldn't count on it in realistically, but it's still, yeah. So yeah, what would I do? It's interesting because I do always think of like, I don't know, because I've got, you know, ideas of like what fantasy gun would I make for the sake of making something weird and cool, and I've got ideas. So it would have to be a pistol. I mean, I think like also basically if I had to go with anything in particular, well, I don't know. If I had to go with something that like in the percussion era, I don't know. Revolver era, a double action Smith & Wesson. Well, I don't know. I'd have to look at the lockwork between... I'd have to refresh myself between the lockwork between a Schofield and a Webley. Because yeah, the Webley has like a better... does have a better hinge release. But the Schofield... well, it was more popular worldwide. And I don't know necessarily... I don't know if one is necessarily better than the other. Yeah, I might have to go with the Webley actually. But the idea of a Schofield is also cool. Or Smith & Wesson number 3 and with the double action trigger, that would be good. Otherwise, like a gas delayed blowback semi-auto pistol of some kind. Probably, if I could get away with it, like, you know, double stack, I don't know. 'Cause here's the thing, I really like the Makarov pistol. Its cartridge is considered to be kind of wimpy. It's not really that wimpy. It's just a little bit below 9mm, and people give 9mm crap, but it's a pistol round. It's a pistol round. So probably, well, something maybe in 9mm, maybe. double stack magazine. I don't know if it would be a compact. Well, okay. Well, I would appreciate a compact. But also, if I'm carrying around a sword simultaneously, I don't care about size. Let's be real. So, full size. Probably some weird kind of gas delay blowback. Probably, I don't know, whatever, I don't know. Ask me someday to draw a pistol and, you know, I can give that aesthetic. I don't know how it would actually work, but this is Fantasyland at this point, so, you know, there'd be that. Yeah, that would be my my preferred thing. I don't know, I also want to give props to, like, a pole arm, but I don't know. And I certainly... So I've been thinking D&D stuff. If I was gonna have an Avenger Endgame thing with my self-insert character, you know, me, who does use, in the D&D world I've created, who uses sword and gun. That's my deal. If there was an event like an Avengers Endgame level of like, okay, now we're doing things seriously here. We're sorry, I've just been reminded of the fact that I got to the Daunting Mountain and then I had to come all the way back. Like, that's Dokapon, everyone. But yeah, no, but yeah, no, I think, like, in that scenario, I would use gun blades, but also that has magic, so... It would be gun blades, similar shape sword, but, like, it would be like rapiers, but instead of having a super fancy guard, it would be a double-barreled pistol on each sword, and it would be dual-wielding those swords. Which... I don't know. Just seems too good. Just seems too good. And I think there is a very limited time where gun blades could have been made and could have been actually a not terrible option. In the percussion era. When you had before cartridges, maybe a little bit into cartridges, but that would have been a very strange weapon. If you had a percussion revolver, like, imagine a Lamat, you know, you've got a giant-ass cylinder because you have to have the arbor, the cylinder axis pin. Basically, you have to have that be a shotgun barrel. Imagine that, except instead of a shotgun barrel, you had to have a sword tang. And you could probably make a smaller sword, or a smaller revolver that way, and it would also kind of basically function as a rapier. I think, anyway. It might be a little bit too heavy, it might be a little bit too much weight, but for a combination weapon, I think it would be acceptable, so... And as far as I can tell, nobody ever did that, and we only have, like, the axe gun, which is cool, but also... not the same thing. Also flintlock.